So basically, after everything that I've done over the past 3 games, all the decisions I've made and all the stuff that's happened, has all come down to this, which is 3 choices. God damn it. Yo, what is up guys, this is Tyrannic Swine here, and welcome to another game review, and this time I'm reviewing Mass Effect 3, the final game in the Mass Effect trilogy, until Mass Effect Andromeda. So, the story of Mass Effect 3 is that 6 months have passed since the events of Mass Effect 2, and the Reapers have now arrived to begin their destructive terror upon the galaxy. So Commander Shepard and his crew have to make sure to unite the galaxy so that they can defeat the Reapers once and for all and break the cycle. Now, Mass Effect 3 is pretty much a war game, because the first one is more about exploring and trying to stop a threat before it happens. Mass Effect 2 is trying to stop like a collective enemy of sorts that are trying to pretty much create their own thing, and then this is like full-out war is Mass Effect 3, and I really did like the story pretty much throughout the entire game until the very end. The characters once again are pretty much on par with Mass Effect 2, as you get to see like your usual characters from Mass Effect 1 and 2 again, but there's also a few new characters introduced as well that, even though that have come in pretty late to the game story, they're still pretty decent, like Samantha Trainer and Steve Cortez, who are actually fairly decent characters once you get to know them, along with a few other characters who are introduced as well. Now, the story does go along through different arcs. Like the first part of the game, it focuses mainly on uniting the Turians and the Krogan. Then pretty much the halfway point of the game is uniting the Geth and the Quarians, or basically just stopping their war overall. Then basically the next part of the game is trying to find the key component for the Crucible, which is what you use to to finish the Reapers. And then pretty much after that, the very final part of the game is defeating Cerberus and activating the Crucible, basically ending the game. Now, this is the thing, I really liked the way Mass Effect 3 went along its story as it goes through, as it concludes a lot of things that have been known throughout the game, like the Genophage and the Geth-Quarian War. It nicely concludes those wars and everything. And of course, because of things that happened in previous Mass Effect games, you need to have a certain requirements to make sure you get the best possible ending for them, and that was excuse me, that was actually pretty decent. Like I said before, other characters from before, you get to see a lot more development once again, but for some reason the conversational aspect, the conversation wheel, there's not as many options compared to the first and second Mass Effect games. Of course, by this point in time, there's not really much else your companions can say, because you pretty much know most about the information about them, but still, it's like there's very little, there's only like 2 options most of the time now, and then you have like your Paragon and Renegade options, and then your Paragon Renegade interrupts. But the conversation wheel is a lot less, it's a lot smaller, and a lot less variety in this game, and that's a little bit disappointing. Of course, there is some characters that do die in this game as well, and some can't be saved. They will die no matter what your decision is, apart from a few, but you need to meet certain requirements. But the thing is, after all this character development and the story, and after gaining everything you have, of course, there is the ending itself. And I'm not really going to go on much about the ending, because I will actually make a separate video for this. But the ending, let's say originally, was terrible. For a game of Mass Effect scope and story, it was terrible, and basically betrayed the fans of this game. But overall, apart from the ending, I think the story, along with the characters and their development over time, since the characters are still very good in this game, and are still very fun to hang around with, and you still get to like hear a lot more jokes, sort of, but it's also very depressing kind of moments because since it's a massive war, a lot of bad things can happen. But overall, I think the story and the characters were mainly done well, apart from the very end of the game. Now, the mechanics of Mass Effect 3 are pretty much combines the first and second Mass Effects, along with a few new things. The power wheel, there is a lot more power options in this game compared to any of the other Mass Effects. There is a lot of powers for each of the classes, and once again you get to pick from your usual classes from the first and second Mass Effect games: Soldier, Adept, Engineer, Infiltrator, Sentinel, Vanguard. And yes, all of these classes have their own unique powers, with a few sort of showing up from time to time in both classes, but there's a wide variety of them, and they also once again have their weaknesses and strengths against certain enemy types. And I think Mass Effect 3 is probably the best Mass Effect when it comes to the amount of powers and variety in them. The leveling up system is pretty much combines Mass Effect 1s and 2s. Mass Effect 2s was sort of disappointing because there wasn't much to it, but that didn't really annoy me. And Mass Effect 1, there was just quite a lot of it. Mass Effect 3 combines the both of them. It has the large amount of Mass Effect 1, and it has the sort of split up section that you have in Mass Effect 2. Whereas at the end, like, the first half of your power level up, there's like one select option. Then when you get into the second half, there's two options to choose from, which will either help out your character with their powers or weapons or their health and shields. And I really like the leveling up system in this game. It actually was quite there was definitely a lot of options you could pick from, especially since there was probably 6 or 8 levels to choose from, things to rank up. And I really did like it, and the levels have been increased from 30 to 60 this time, basically back to the classic Mass Effect game. So it does take some time, but if you basically import your game from Mass Effect 2, you pretty much have already covered half of those levels, and then you'll just have the other half to go through. You will, by the end of the game, you will have almost fully upgraded all your levels. There'll probably just be one that's left out, but nonetheless, I think the leveling up was done particularly well, just like all the other Mass Effect games. And then there's the weapons themselves. There is a lot of weapons in this game compared to the first Mass Effect, which lacked variety, Mass Effect 2, which had variety but lacked in the amount of weapons, and then Mass Effect 3 basically improves both of these. It has variety and a decent amount. And there is quite a lot. You can use assault rifles, sniper rifles, shotguns, pistols, and SMGs are now finally able to be used by all classes. You can use all these classes, weapon classes, in each of your stats. Well, not stats, but your types, your power types. But what's been introduced in this game is weight capacity, meaning that when your power is cooling down, it will take longer or faster depending on the amount of weapons you are carrying. And I think this is a cool option to put in there, but really I was more of a weapon go-to guy, not really relying on my powers all too much until absolutely necessary. It's mainly my teammates' powers that I rely on. But also there is attachments that have been brought back into this game from Mass Effect 1, which I think is another nice re-addition to the game, since they really do actually help out. In this game, they really do make a bit of a difference compared to Mass Effect 1, where they kind of don't. This one, they really do, and it does depend on which attachment you take or put on your weapons. That'll make a difference. Some will make a weapon more damaging, one will give it more ammo capacity, one will even make a weapon lighter, and some will even make it have more accuracy. Not only that, there is a lot of armor in this game too, like the armor customization. And each of these armor pieces have like a specific increase to your character. Like some will increase your health, some will increase your shields, some will increase your weapon damage, some will increase your melee damage, and some will even increase your ammo capacity, or even your shield regeneration. And I think the amount of armor in this game was actually quite variative. And it's always best to make sure which ones work best for you and your character so that they work in the best situation. Basically the powers, the weapons, the armor customization in this game is all very nice. And the fact that you can also customize your armor like in the second Mass Effect game. everything, all of this is pretty much very nice and well done. Now, the enemies in this game, there is a lot of enemies in this game. You won't be fighting mercenaries or pirates like you did in the first two Mass Effect games, since this is a war situation, so everyone needs to come together to fight against the greatest threat, which is the Reapers. In this game, you'll be fighting pretty much against the Reapers, basically the converted forces of all, like, the species in the galaxy that have been converted into Reaper soldiers. You'll be fighting against Cerberus, and you'll be fighting against the Geth once more. And yeah, so there's 3 enemy types in this game. You have basically the big guys, the Reapers, the main threat. You have basically the traitors, and then you have the guys that you want to help out but still have to fight. But yeah, I think the enemies are actually, compared to the second Mass Effect game, especially, the enemies in this game feel tougher compared to Mass Effect 2. Since some enemies have basically can have some additional help from their allies, like marauders can give cannibals like armor on the outside of them, or well, technically they can give armor to themselves or husks or any enemy around them, making it more difficult to kill those enemies. And there is a lot of variation of enemies too. So you have your infantry, your ranged, your heavy units, and then your melee enemies. There is a lot of enemy types in this game, and it's always best to make sure you have the right weapons for the job at hand. Or specific powers too, as these enemies have specific weaknesses from specific powers, like warp and infernal grenades or incinerate are good against armor, overload, energy drain are good against shields, and then you have grenades have returned in Mass Effect 3. Well, you can technically have in Mass Effect 2, but that's only by a DLC, really, in some cases. But grenades have now returned in Mass Effect 3 to be used, and there's a lot of different variations. Like you have your usual frag grenades, lift grenades, cluster grenades, sticky grenades as well. There's quite a lot of variations in grenades in this game for some reason. The same with the powers. And so whenever you're going up against enemies too, it's always best to make sure you bring a good combination of your characters too, like the teammates that you have. It's always nice to have a good combination so that whenever you go up against a large amount of enemies, you'll be able to take care of them very easily. And it's always best to level them up too, so to make the job easier. As the more I went throughout the game, the easier it was to kill the enemies, as I was using my credits to upgrade the weapons, and by upgrading my armor too to make myself stronger, and by upgrading my teammates. So making sure that you do that is always a good thing to do when you're going up against the enemies of the game. Now, considering the difficulty, I think Mass Effect 3 is difficult to say which out of all the 3 Mass Effects is the toughest and the easiest. To me, it considers the areas that I may have gotten stuck on and took time. Mass Effect, I'd say, is possibly the toughest when it comes to that situation. Mass Effect 2 will probably be the next one, since I really did get stuck on probably a few areas. Whereas Mass Effect 3, I just basically took my time and patience, because after learning from the first 2 Mass Effect games, it's always best to make sure you know what powers your teammates have, what are best against the enemy, and what weapons are the best against them. So it's always best to make sure you take note of your weapons and everything else, so you know that you prepare for the enemies. So yeah, I think the enemies in this game do pose a bit of a challenge, since there is quite a lot of variation in them in this game. The difficulty is tough in some ways as well. But compared to the first and second Mass Effect games, it's probably a little bit easier. But other than that, I'd say this game was fairly decent with its enemies, but it seems to be sort of getting weaker and weaker with its difficulty. Now, the level design of Mass Effect 3. Mass Effect 3 is probably the most linear of the Mass Effect games, as despite it's in a war situation, which I can kind of understand, there's not as much exploration compared to the first and second Mass Effect games. So, of course, because the Reapers are in specific areas and are invading, it's not going to be as easy to move around to different systems. But basically, when you are in the galaxy map, you can go to different systems and use your scanner to see if you can pick up any allies for the final fight to help out. As there is the galactic readiness and sort of building up your army in this game. So it's always, so not only do you have to do the main missions themselves to get a lot of support, but it's always best to explore around the galaxy to find those little bits of help that are all very necessary for the final fight, even though it kind of does amount to nothing in some ways. But yeah, the exploration is a bit more restrictive in Mass Effect 3, and the combat is a bit more fluid since Mass Effect 1 is pretty stiff, Mass Effect 2 is a little bit more smooth, but Mass Effect 3 it sort of turns into a bit like Gears of War in some ways, since now you can roll and a few other things. But it still feels a little bit different because Gears of War still feels stiff in its own sort of way, whereas this feels quite smooth. The animation, there's also a bit of a complaint really, is the fact that this game was kind of rushed as well in some ways. So some of the bits with the animation and like facial animation especially, it's a bit off in some areas, and you can, when playing this game again, I could really see it this time, that comparing it to Mass Effect 1 and 2, that this game really was rushed, and the fact that it kind of suffered. The length of this game is about, it took me 40 hours to do, but this included the DLC as well. But I think, honestly, Mass Effect 3 without the DLC, along with Mass Effect 2 and 1, probably is the longest of the Mass Effect games, which is kind of surprising since it's the most limited. There is also the store front, where you can basically go to your shuttle bay in the Normandy, where you can buy like either armor, weapon attachments, or upgrade your weapons. Since now the weapons are numbered for upgrades, like 1 to 5, basically meaning each upgrade makes it stronger and more powerful. There is a few other things. The soundtrack is again just as decent as it was in the second, and well, the second Mass Effect especially, since the first Mass Effect game was a little bit limited when it came to the soundtrack. But Mass Effect 2 and 3 definitely improved upon that. So yeah, I think mostly this is mainly about the campaign. It mainly goes pretty well, apart from a few things that sort of make it go down a little bit. But overall, I think these extra bits, like the level design too, is actually very interesting as well, since you're going to planets that sometimes you haven't been to. Like hell, you're going to the Quarian's home world, which is Rannoch, and so yeah, you get to see a few more different types of planets in this game compared to the first and second, and it's very nice to see where these go. I really think the level design was really done well. But yeah, like I said, there's a few glitches and facial animation stuff that sort of shows that the game really was kind of rushed in production. But nonetheless, all these other extra type of features are actually done fairly well, and apart from a few, like I said, technical glitches, but other than that it was okay. Now finally, there is multiplayer in this game. The first and second Mass Effect obviously didn't have it. But Mass Effect 3 now has multiplayer, but it's not like your usual multiplayer where you're fighting against other players. It is more like Gears of War, where it's Horde mode, where you have to fight against 11 waves of enemies, which get tougher over time, and where you have to do like certain objectives in between, like so you can get a good amount of credit, so you can like buy either like packs, which will give you new weapons and characters that you can level up and use over time. And the level cap for the multiplayer characters in this game is 20, and there is quite a lot of characters for each class. Well, probably not to begin with, but after all the DLCs, there is quite a lot of characters, along with the maps too. But there is a bunch of characters for each class, like the Adepts, Soldiers, Engineers, Infiltrators, Sentinels, and Vanguards. There is characters for each of these classes. But multiplayer actually does play a role in connecting with the campaign, as if you play it, it helps out with your galactic readiness for the final battle in the campaign. So the multiplayer actually does play a role in helping out, and it's not just there for fun or just a pointless addition, since you're going to need all the help you can get when it comes to building up your final force in the final battle in Mass Effect 3. Honestly, I think there's quite a lot of fun in the multiplayer. It's actually fair decent, especially since you can like customize your character and everything, and like even name them themselves. But they can only use 2 weapons at a time, so yeah, it's a bit limited. And there's also a few like extra sort of powers, like you have like your heavy weapon, like a refill health and shield kind of power, full ammo capacity, and a medi-gel option for when you go down, and if you have no one around to help you, you can use that before the enemies execute you. Now each of these characters have their own like powers and even melee type, and because there's different species you can play in this game, it's very variety as the amount of characters, and along with the powers. And mainly overall, since I have played the multiplayer quite a lot, and I think it hasn't really gotten dull whatsoever, even after playing it all these years. It is very fun to play, and I really think it's a nice addition to the game, and it makes me look forward to what they'll do in Mass Effect Andromeda to see if it will improve or not what they do, since Mass Effect Andromeda's multiplayer is pretty much going to be done in the same style. But yeah, overall I think the multiplayer was a pretty nice addition to this game, and especially since it's not just fun to play, but it also ties in with the campaign too, since it like helps out with the galactic readiness and stuff like that. So yeah, I think overall Mass Effect 3 is a fairly decent final installment, apart from a few nitpicks like the animations and some technical glitches and stuff like that, and then there's the ending itself, which was pretty much one of the worst endings of all time, especially for a franchise like this. It does really slim down the score for this game. But overall, I think what a lot of people forget about is the fact that they mainly say this is a bad game just because of the ending, and they don't really look at everything else that the game offers. So overall, I think Mass Effect 3 is a fair, decent game, but compared to Mass Effect 1 and 2, it kind of lacks. It sort of hurts their reputation because of that ending in some ways. So overall, I'm going to give Mass Effect 3 an 8.5. So, that is my review of Mass Effect 3, a fairly decent end to a good franchise, but sort of ruined at the very last second along with a few other nitpicks. So yeah, this is the final Mass Effect game done before Mass Effect Andromeda comes out. Hopefully, I'll have this up before Mass Effect Andromeda comes out, but nonetheless, hope you guys have enjoyed this review. Leave a like down below, subscribe, yeah, comment down below if you think is right or wrong with this game, or if you have something else to say about the whole ending stuff, since I know you guys love that. So, yeah, I'll see you guys next random video.